Hi there, everyone. I am Dani, spiritualtherapist.com. Let me just pop my teeth in. Hello, everyone. I'm Dani, spiritualtherapist.com, and she's back. We are having the lovely Andrea Foulkes back with us today. We did a little broadcast last week. Some of you had questions, and we're going to go straight into a couple of those questions. But first of all, Andrea Foulkes, soul awakener, soul whisperer, past life regression expert. Welcome.
Thank you, lovely Dani. That's a lovely introduction. I think the thing is, when we work on this level, we can be whatever people really need, really.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as we're coming from a loving space, and both of us are very qualified in different therapeutic modulars that we can then bring into our kind of spiritual mentoring and caring for, the people that come to us. So last week we had some people that we invited to ask questions, and the first one is from Tesseract. Hello, Tesseract. And this lady asks about changing timelines, and that she feels that she's on one timeline 1 minute and another timeline the next, and it's very confusing. What say you to this?
I think they in the bigger picture are running different timelines anyway. I think there's different timelines running, and then I think your personal vibration can determine which timelines you're running on. So I hear people talking about there's different realities running, and I've experienced different realities myself. Like, I've seen things phase in and out of reality, and I've been here with a client once, and we looked out and we saw a combine harvester in the field, and we both thought, that looks a bit odd. Like, how did that combine harvester get there? And the guy was dressed not like a Somerset farmer in Glastonbury. And we looked at each other and both saw this man, looked back, and he was gone.
Wow.
And we both saw that. So it was phasing into a different timeline. So it's a bit like how I suppose people see ghosts, isn't it? It depends on your frequency. So, if you're moving into different timelines, past, present, future, the thing that I think is the most crucial is that you're able to determine which timeline is a collective timeline that they're running at this point in time, and also your own personal reality, which can merge into the collective timeline. So you're running a timeline which is benevolent and loving and beneficial to you, yet it merges with a timeline that's running, but you're on a higher frequency version of that timeline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And do you think it's because there's so many people now really working on themselves, doing their inner work, bringing up things from the past, from childhood, from teenage years, from 20s, etc. And there's this subconscious, unconscious healing that's happening. There's a lot of triggers getting pulled. As we're going through this mass healing, the energy on the planet has shifted. It's becoming lighter and more higher in vibration. And I feel that also could be elements why we think, oh my God, what time is it? Where am I? Why am I feeling like this? Didn't I just do that? Shouldn't I have done that? Who am I talking to? I thought I was talking to somebody else. Do you think that has something to do with it too?
I think so. And also, if you look at the work you're doing and the work I'm doing, we talked about this earlier. We're here in whatever country we're in, like I'm in the UK or in Costa Rica, but yet we're working with people all over the world over the internet. So we're in all these different timelines as well, like times of day. So we're not fixed in a reality, even though we look like we're physically in one place, we're emotionally and energetically in lots of timelines in lots of different countries.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, I'd like to apologize to the 4 beautiful people today that got on my Zoom at different times. It was either me, it could have been you, it could have been the universe, it could have been that bloody change of time, because in Costa Rica, they don't change the clock. It's just annoying. In America, Canada, Australia, England, stop it. Everyone should be on the same time. It is a confusion. It is made to confuse. It causes such upset in third world countries, for example, people trying to do business. There's even a couple of states in America that are like, we're not changing the time zone. No. Yeah. And if we don't know this, often we discover these things like that when we discover them for not good reasons, because we're waiting for somebody who is going to come on in 2 hours time, which is what happened to me today. Amazing, just amazing. All this conversation, timelines, jumping timelines, inner healing, regression. Now, we also spoke about, and again, I'm going to get to the other questions, but you and I just had a conversation and a concern that I raised in past life regression. Now, I am a past life regression therapist. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and do this time therapy regression too. But I wouldn't dream of doing such delicate work over the internet. Ever.
I know. We just talked about that, didn't we? And I've done, you know, I think I said in my other thing, I've done this work for 20 years. I do past life regression, inner child healing, ancestral timeline healing. But in the work that I do over the internet, I do reading the emotional Akashic record using my intuition. Now, I'll tune into past lives, inner child, ancestral, and entities, and I deal a lot with entities, but I would never in a million years, and I tell people all the time, do not do regression over the internet, because you're taking people into, you know, alpha, beta, theta, delta states of mind. And like we said, the internet could go down and you're leaving somebody in a vulnerable space where you can't connect with them.
Yeah.
And, you know, having done this work, you know, there are people who are used to doing deep inner work and they might take themselves very deeply in a Skype session, but you're not going to go very deep in general, and you would be self-guided in that through your own ability and where you're at. But if you're someone who's not used to doing kind of deep emotional regression, and you go, I know from having sat with people who, you know, I'm shocked at what's happened to them, and thankfully I'm in the room to guide them and pull them out of their body so that they're looking down on it, they're not emotionally involved, because a lot of emotion can come up. And if you're sat in a room on your own, you know, or lay down in a room on your own, I can't go over and touch you or, you know, help you in any way because you're the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I would say no, don't go to anybody who does actual regression. And I certainly also would question anybody who was doing qualified sort of hypnosis courses where you get a certificate and all the work. There has been no work done in person where you've actually physically met the people.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I'm really concerned about this. And, you know, because a lot of us are working, you know, on, you know, like this on Zoom. And, you know, I would never regress somebody online who has the possibility of hitting some real childhood trauma or some off-planet trauma, because they have no idea how their body's going to respond. The physical shaking, the screaming, the terrible, awful, wretched things that can happen with a person that's having a massive healing in the moment. You know, it does concern me. So I really do urge everyone, please be very careful and, you know, love yourself enough on this journey of healing and self-revelation. Don't put yourself completely in the hands of somebody who's not physically in the room. And when I am working on inner child deeply, I have 2 men I did in the last 2 months, and I had their wives outside of the room. Everyone was planned, prepared, because I've got these 2 men in particular on a certain program, and they're doing a lot of deep work. So the wives were outside the room while they did an inner child connection with me like this. And then I text the wife and the wife goes in. But before that, it's set up, because what if the internet drops, like you said? You know, but we can handle it safely that way, but we don't want to take someone down into such a deep hypnotic state they can't come up and out healthily. They don't want to come up thinking, oh, I'm on a mixed timeline, who am I? You know, it's frightening for people. It really is. So
yeah,
just
often I get people who say, you know, we do work over Skype because they're in the UK sometimes, and then I say, you know, I think because of where you're at, and I often talk about, you've got to drop. I always talk about this dropping into your emotional self. And I can see with some people, they struggle to drop into that emotional self. So they're intellectually listening to what you're saying and they're processing it on an intellectual level, but they're not processing it deeply enough. And yet you could have someone else you did exactly the same with, and they could drop into their emotional self and process it. So sometimes I say to them, I think you'd get a benefit out of coming to actually see me in person and go into this deep level to get to that little thing that I can't get to by doing this over the internet. But I think, without saying about people in the UK, I just think people in America are, and I'm sure you have a lot of clients in America, it's people in America are used to therapy. They're used to doing this inner work. Whether they've gone through conventional talking to a psychotherapist for a while and then realized that actually I need to move on to a more spiritual level of processing now. I'm going a lot deeper with it than just talking about my stuff. Whereas in England, I think, you know, because I did this stuff on TV, people thought, oh, past life regression, really interesting. But actually, once they came to do the inner work, they realized that they were going into inner child, ancestral, and healing that. But out of choice, they would have never thought, oh, I need to heal some inner child things. Because I think in general in the UK, we're fairly new into this therapy, and certainly into doing inner child healing. You know, it's a new concept for people. And often I say to people, I don't know if you've seen that book, it's called Toxic Parents: Overcoming Their Hurtful Legacy by Susan Forward. And often when you say to English people, oh, you might want to buy this book, they often go, oh no, that sounds like a betrayal of my family to buy such a title. Yet actually, even the act of buying the book is setting the intention to heal that aspect of yourself, because you're breaking the family dynamic as well.
Yeah, very true. So people that we decide to pay for sessions in whatever regard, it's really important to find out whether or not that therapist has done their own inner work, because we don't want to be giving our vulnerable selves to someone who doesn't have the ability to emote to the depths of compassion or matching frequency that truly are in a position to help you on your healing journey. So we're going to move to question number 2. It was Sue W. Hi, Sue. She asks, past trauma, how long does it take to heal? And what she's referring to specifically is she's had spinal surgery. Her brother had spinal surgery. Her mother had spinal surgery. So there is a timeline here of an ancestral issue that's carried through the bloodline. People think everything is genetic. What do you say to that?
Well, they've obviously got a pattern of healing it by deciding to have surgery, because that's what they've learned to, you know, we've got this ancestral issue. From my perspective, there's an emotional issue. So we've got to heal the ancestor, the original ancestor who had some issue with their spine, and go into the story of the ancestor. So to hear the story of the ancestor, so you've got to go into the timeline, find the ancestor that had the original trauma, then also check that you don't have, so that's your birth lineage, and then you've got to check the soul lineage just to check you haven't got a backup trauma in your soul lineage, which is your past life lineage. So you're healing the ancestral lineage, which is the DNA lineage, and then you're healing the soul lineage. So once you get to the origin of the story and you heal that, you can heal the timeline, and then it doesn't have to keep manifesting. So, you know, the next generation won't have to, if you heal it, the next generation won't have to have surgery, because it won't even be in their energy field. It will be deleted emotionally and energetically from the Akashic records to be neutral. It might be there, but it's neutral, it's dormant, the story's not still running. Like, I suppose a good analogy to give is, I had a client who, she had breast cancer, and we were looking at how she'd manifested this. And when we went back in a few generations, so I don't know if we talked about this the last time, because it's just a great story. She'd gone into her great-great-grandmother's story, who'd been the elder sibling in the family, her youngest sibling of her great-great-grandmother, so the sister had a child. Of course, it was not a time on the planet when you could keep the baby, so she'd had to give the baby away. The eldest sister had arranged for the baby to be given away. her great-great-grandmother had held the trauma of that experience in her heart, in her breast tissue, and that trauma had never been healed, and that was part of the contributing factor to this trauma in her breast tissue. And so once she healed the trauma, it then releases it energetically.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's so incredible how powerful we are, how much healing we can do without looking at necessarily just relying on conventional Western ways, but to go into the soul, into the body, into the cellular memory. And I know this is one of the healing services that you offer for people, that you could really help people go back, find the origin, and heal up that ancestral trauma so we can end the patterns. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, Sue, I hope that helps you. And ultimately, I don't think there really is a length of time to heal something. I know that there are people that can have a session with someone like Andrea, focusing on the ancestral, finding the origin, and then it is taken out. The trauma is released. So it's down to the individual.
It's like that, you know, you can access this, you know, a lot of people don't even need to see the story. You know, if you can access divine forgiveness, it can heal in a second. I mean, or some people you think, oh, you've got to get to that next level because it's the emotion of it's got to come out. And, you know, sometimes I'm sure you hear the same. I say to people, how long do you think they've been holding on to that? And they're like, I've been holding on to that for 50 years in this lifetime. And, you know, and I can see it's like 26 lifetimes or something. And you think, wow, and they go, and it's been healed in half an hour, you know, and that's your potential. You know, you're carrying this round for lifetime after lifetime, year after year after year, and then you finally get ready to release this, and it's gone in half an hour or a few minutes.
And we are, human beings are so powerful. We are so beautifully strong and powerful in ways that we are only, some of us, coming to understand through spiritual healing, ancestral healing, understanding metaphysics. There isn't a degree needed. There isn't an encyclopedia of learning to be done. We're learning how to access our own energy from us, from our inner battery, from our soul battery. And it makes me so happy that people are really looking at other ways to bring about peace of mind, to let go of stress and anxiety without pill popping or relying on a doctor for bills they can't afford anymore, which we're going to come to in terms of how do we make a living. So now I'm going to move to question number 3, and I have to read this one. This is from Dolores. Hi, Dolores. Oh, you cannot minimize. Okay. Where did you go, honey? How do I just checked it, but now we're recording. So, all right, I'm going to just tell you the story because I've read it several times. So Dolores had a being that would come to her, a white orb, and she called it father from a child. And she asked and asked and asked over time, who is this? Who is this father, this being that represents itself in this white, beautiful orb? And then she had a complication and she was in hospital, and it was complications from chemotherapy. And she demanded that this father, white orb, came to her. And when it came to her, she demanded to see who this is. And a white extraterrestrial stood before her. And she was not pleased. And she felt shame and guilt coming from this being that had plugged into her all of these years, allowed her to feel there was some kind of God-like, father-like connection, but what was standing in front of her was some kind of rank extraterrestrial. She said the next day she was in bed and she awoken and she saw a cord tethered from her going nowhere. And she realized that that extraterrestrial had removed itself. And so it should have done. So wanted to share that with you. She wanted to ask about that and ask what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, we could, it's such a subject. The thing is, though, I think we go into the whole story about orbs. Not all orbs are the same thing. You know, I think some orbs are actual babies waiting to be born, some are maybe passed over people, some are maybe benevolent beings, some are not. So I think it really requires huge levels of discernment and integrity in your own being. And I always ask, only beings who are working for my soul's highest purpose can work with me or help me or anything at that level. And it's such a simple thing to say, to really state that affirmation. And so, she was looking for a father outside of herself, instead of looking for the highest vibration of herself or benevolent beings, so it's the wording you use which will draw in beings. And in our naivety, I think we've been involved in lots of things that we've agreed to in other timelines of existence, or other, in another timeline of existence, you've probably thought, yeah, when I come to planet Earth, that'll be okay. And so from that perspective of where you were before, and these are the conversations I've often had to interdimensional beings or benevolent ETs, that mean, even the ones that mean well, from their perspective of the non-physical form, it's very different when you're actually here on planet Earth, incarnated into a physical body. It's a lot harder, the experience of being in a physical body. So from their perspective, whether they're light years in the future, and they're thinking, oh, it should be so easy for you, or this or that, or, you made an agreement with them in another timeline to agree to do things, or them to help you, or you to help their planet, to share information, those things can become overwhelming. Like we could get into a whole big topic about, being in a birthing program for another planet. I've had those experiences where I've had to opt out of that program because, my stomach used to swell up like I was 9 months pregnant. Often, I mean, that's a whole subject in itself.
Yeah.
Because when I travel, I would go to a place, and, if I'd never been there before, often my stomach would blow up and I'd be like, oh no, it's like I'm birthing or creating some interdimensional galactic baby linked to this place I've been to. And, oh, it's all very nice idea having these, interdimensional babies, but actually I don't want to walk around looking like I'm 9 months pregnant for 3 days. And it's not IBS, and it's not linked to what I've eaten, and it's not linked to the flight. It's purely these interdimensional babies. And, in my past incarnation, in this lifetime, I was a model, and it was even happening then. And then I just realized what was happening, and I just opted out of that program. I don't want to be in that program anymore. So no matter how woo-woo you think things are, and that's for a lot of people really woo-woo. So how can you heal something if you don't ever, if nobody, and certainly in a 3D reality of TV or media, nobody's going to tell you, oh, you might want to, or healthcare professionals ever going to go, I think stomach issue might be linked to some intergalactic program you're in with a birthing, thing with another planet. They'd have you locked up for that. But you need to heal, so you have to consider these things. But also, I think it's to be very discerning in who you share this information with, and being very grounded with it as well.
Absolutely. There's so many things here. There's so many different ways that we could go, looking at the real true fabric of the soul in the physical body, where we've been, where we're going, who we are, the information we come in with. One of the things that, a word that annoys the arse off of me, a statement, woo-woo. Woo-woo? Knock it off, woo-woo. If you're frightened as a person about new information, or information that really helps humanity grow, but because people have said it's woo-woo, are you really so influenced by a word? Woo-woo my arse. Look at the woo-woo. Go there, go explore, go play, because everything else right now is collapsing. Every system is collapsing. The authoritative energy on our planet, the father figure, the mother figure. We are programmed from birth to look outside of ourselves. We have to, as babies, we're not going to survive if we don't rely on a higher authority. But there comes a time where we've got to take ownership of self. There are grown children 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, for example, who are still allowing their parent to treat them in the child-parent relationship. It's done. However old you are now, in terms of, you need, let's talk from like, I don't know, 18 years. You still need guidance, of course, ideally, but all right, let's go 25. Let's just go there. 25-year-olds on to the end of life. If you're still in a relationship with a parent energy where you go home, you talk to them when you feel like an idiot, you feel small, they're criticizing you, they're hurting you, here's what you do. You grab hold of that little girl inside of you or that little boy inside of you. You sit that little one on your lap. You imagine wrapping your arms around that little one, and you show that little one, look how big you got. Look, you're grown up now. You're grown up. And in that shift in resonance, in allowing yourself to come up and match energetically the parent energy, they do not have the hold anymore. And Andrea, this is something that I'm seeing everywhere. Even the lady before you, the client I had before you, same thing, same thing.
What I find, which is really interesting, is I usually take people back to the day they decided, because in your childhood, exactly what you've said, you've got to suck it up. You can't go live with the nice people down the road. Your parents are responsible for your food, your clothing, and your shelter. So you can't. So what you usually find is, in doing inner child therapy with people, is they'll go back to the day, and I take them back to the day they decided the primary carer, which in general is the mum or the father, they decided their happiness was more important than their own. And then they gave their power away to the primary carer. So you need to heal the inner child back to the day where they reclaim that power, and we change the story from that day, whatever age it was they were, and what their particular story was. And it can be something, often you can see it's, kids get excited running around in the park, and then you see the mum going, where were you? I lost you for 10 minutes, you naughty child. How dare you run off and have fun and enjoy yourself? Wallop. And of course, then the child's really confused, because like, I actually had a really nice time for 10 minutes while I was running about. I wasn't thinking you were worrying where I was. And now I've upset you, and my joy isn't worth having. So making you happy is more important than my joy of having fun and running around and doing what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And just back to Sue and her Dolores sharing the being that had plugged into her, that turned out to be some random, extraterrestrial entity, and how disappointed she was. But then she took the power back, she demanded to see it. And so she took authority over. She was done. She was over it. She's like, show yourself. And it's things like this that we have to be very, very mindful of. It's the time to do that. I would say to people, go inside, breathe in, breathe out, go into a nice, relaxed state, light up the inside out. Are there any plugins in you anywhere? Anything hidden? Is there a guru cap on your crown chakra, which is basically feeding you all this religious, frightening, fearful doctrine? Isn't it time for you to take that cap off and just let your beautiful crown flourish? Because we didn't come here to be owned by any one person or any one being.
And people get addicted to guides. They're like, oh no, it's my guide. I'm like, you have to let it go. Is it working for your soul's highest purpose? And often there'll be like a kerfuffle in the background, and it's like, and then I ask, have you finished your own earthly incarnations to these beings that often are portraying to be their guides? And they're like, no, or they haven't even got a physical body, and they're just, hitchhiking on this person, and the person's so in such a codependency with this guide. And I'm saying, well, wouldn't you rather be connected to your own higher self, your authentic self, your multidimensional self? Wouldn't you rather be connected to that than these beings who might not be as evolved as your true soul potential is? They might be limiting you.
Feeding off the energy, feeding off the battery energy, because they're draining that to make themselves feel better, but they're cloaked, hidden as well. I've got two more little quick examples, real-time examples of the authority figure, the being that plugs in and holds power over the human without their awareness. So my friend Nita Ryerson, she was just kind of hanging out with, she's a very spiritual, clairvoyant medium, amazing, beautiful lady who sadly has dementia right now. But she shared with me one day, a friend of hers, she was really upset, really crying. I'm like, Dani, what's the matter? And she said, oh, so-and-so just walked over and here I am in my, we call them dungarees. They call it bib and brace in America. So Nita's in this really cute little, outfit, and she's feeling really good, and she's lost some weight, and she's done her hair, and she's feeling confident, and, she's enjoying herself. And her friend comes over and says, oh my God, my guide said, what are you wearing? And it crushed her because it went right into the insecure little inner child inside of her. And I'm like, dude, you should have said, I think your guide's a bitch. You know what I mean? But we're like, some people are like, oh no, don't call the guides bitches or bastards. Oh, you mustn't say anything naughty because you might go to hell. You're not going to go to hell. It's an illusion. It's all bloody lies. Second example I dated a guy very briefly years ago. I did not know he was a chronic alcoholic because he hid it for a couple of dates. So I'm at his house. It's the first time I've kind of gone there, and we're watching a movie, and I look in the far corner by the staircase. There is a gigantic demonic, a masculine demon in solid form staring at me. And because I've seen them my entire life, I'm like, whatever. So I turned to this guy and I said, there's a demon standing over there. I take the chance. If the guy runs by, I'm not, I don't even, well, I'm, whatever, completely unattached to anyone's discussion or decision of me. It doesn't keep me prisoner. But anyway, so he looked at me and I went, mate, there is a full-blown demonic over there. And then this guy's like, oh man, I've got something to tell you. I'm like, okay, when I'm a full-blown alcoholic. Oh, I said, and that demonic is handling you, is looshing from you, is encouraging you to drink. Yeah, right there. So and he said, I always felt like there's something. I'm not sure what it was. Is it God? Is it Jesus? Is it Hashem? Is it Jehovah? Is it Muhammad? Is it whoever? And so all of these father figures, mother figures, hierarchical, projections that we have, it is time to find our adult selves, our beautiful, benevolent, metaphysical, spiritual selves, and take ownership. And we don't need permission. We don't need permission.
I think a lot of people who follow this old paradigm spiritual path is like, it's almost like it keeps them down. You've got to be worshipping these hierarchical figures. And I always say to people, if they see my house, I don't have any of these deities in my house. I have a statue of a blue being with blonde hair, and she's got a gold baby inside of herself. That's it. I don't have any of these chutchy things because you've got to neutral the energy of all these beings, because you're just drawing that energy in. Connect to your multi-dimensional self and who you've been, and that will always bring you the highest vibration.
Yeah It's like, I've got if you can see over my shoulder, I've got a little Buddha. It's just this, I love the face of this Buddha, and at night it's got a solar panel in it, so at night the light comes on in its hands, its lily pad that it's holding, and it lights up, and I think it's beautiful. I have not one aspect of religious connection to it. I have another Asian little Buddha in my bathroom because it's pretty. I like it. I have a little gold angel over there in the corner. It's a cherub. It's a Christmas decoration that I didn't want to put away, so I didn't, because I like it. You know what I mean? And yet you're right. I've had the little Ganesh, that removes all the obstacles. I've had the dancing Shiva, played with all of these beautiful, iconic religious artifacts and symbologies, but no fright, no fear, no tyrannical allowance in my system from anything. If Jesus walked in now, I'd be like, mate, do you want a cup of tea? Good to see you again.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you since I was 7. How's it been going?
It's the energy you give it, if you like it as an object, like a ornament or something. I once had a happy Buddha statue at my little place at the beach in Cornwall, and I'd sort of realized that I didn't want these beings anymore, and it just disappeared. It went. And so
Wow.
they do take themselves away if they, they just took itself away. That was the end of it.
Or somebody a bit shifty was walking by thinking, oh, I think I can just help myself to that. However it happens, they're just like, ooh, brilliant. All right, darling. Now you had a specific subject that you really want to share with our audiences.
Yeah, I just was passionate today, and then I messaged you, and I just, today they were passing. I mean, I'll say the date because some people might be watching this later. So today is the 9th of November 2021 in the UK, and who knows when you watch this what will be happening in the future. But everyone in healthcare in the NHS is getting very worried, and care work that they're going to be forced into making a choice that they perhaps don't want to make, linked to the jibby jib. And they're frightened, and it hasn't actually been passed through Parliament yet. It's very close to it, but Parliament has to approve it. And so I think people need to, one, not panic and leave necessarily. For some people, they maybe wait till they're forced to leave. Don't run now if you don't feel confident in yourself, because it might not get passed. That's one thing. Also in America, I saw that a lot of healthcare workers are going to protest, I think, on Thanksgiving. A lot of people, like a lot. And even people who are supporting them who did choose to have the jibby jib, are still supporting the right to choose. But outside of all this, what is going to happen is many people are going to find themselves without a job, and then they're panicking. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Especially if you've always been in employment. If that's what being employed, what I know and what Dani knows from most of our lives, and I certainly know from being 18, so 30 odd years of my working life, I have been self-employed. That is all I know, being self-employed. And I have never been in debt in my life. And so from my experience, I know lots of people can tell people how they got out of debt. I can't teach you how to get out of debt because I've never been in debt. I have always navigated my way through being self-employed, staying in abundance. And I think it's really important that we help people to let go of their fear and to trust their skills and gifts that are going to morph and shape and change, and that to stay in the flow of, and sometimes I do love listening to people like Bashar, who would say, abundance is the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And it really is that simple.
Yeah, brilliant. Is Bashar, is there the human man is bald with glasses? Anyway,
Yeah.
talks really fast. Yeah, I've caught a couple of his videos. Very interesting characters.
Like
Sorry, let me turn this noisy fan off. Say that again.
He sounds like Jim Carrey on speed a bit. It's quite funny, his delivery of how he speaks. Apparently he's linked to the Sasani being, he's a version of Daryl, apparently, light years in the future. But it doesn't really matter who this being is that he's channeling. To be honest with you, he's got some good advice for people. Mm-hmm. And he's funny. And if people could apply that, it would work. But I think the thing that I'm saying about what we're saying about employment and where things are going to go and how people are going to have to change, and I really see more people becoming self-employed. And I think the reason people go into a meltdown or a fear is we're back to going into the ancestral programming, the past lives, the inner child, the beliefs that they have about employment and about how they're going to create abundance. And, like you just said earlier, the parents have put in them, oh, you can't do this job, you have to do this job, you won't make a living out of that, or, this is going to be hard. And actually, the truth of it is, it isn't. But the program beliefs, which are very deeply stored in the subconscious, have got to be all healed now. And that is going to come up for people as they newly find themselves in, an opportunity for self-employment.
You're right. I think there's an awful lot of people, adults, they've been so programmed in order to be or look successful, you have to have this size house, this kind of car, this many children, this many holidays. And it's all bollocks. It's absolute bollocks. The definition of a happy person, like in Costa Rica, they live in these really little little houses, and the rains come, and you never heard so much laughter. There's no TV, and it's just so beautiful to see these people who are so family orientated, so full of love and care. And they're like the Mexicans in the way that they turn their children out, like the hair is, I love that. They're so proud of their children and they present them, because that makes them feel good. But in the Western world, with all of this travesty and the systems collapsing and people thinking, God, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my health insurance? I am so appalled, in a rage at the health system in America in particular, where health insurance comes before life and always has. It's poor people. It's so sad. But something had to crumble, come down, change, shift, because the powers that be, they're not allowed to hold the power anymore. We're not ever going to have again any of these people that are in power for 40 years. What is that about? I'm so tired of white men in suits running my planet.
How can I mean, in the UK, if you saw the people, which I don't know if you've seen because you're abroad, if you've seen the UK health experts, supposedly, I've never seen more sick and ill people in my life, and you're supposedly the health expert telling the people about health. It's blatantly obvious. How much common sense do you need to be able to see, do not listen to these people? They cannot heal themselves.
Here we go.
So know about more.
You just got frozen. Yeah.
More natural things, and that, it's false economy not to invest in your inner self, because it's like when you see people say, oh, but I've got sick and ill, I need money for a transplant. Well, no, you can avoid that if you heal and do this inner work, change your diet, change your lifestyle, look at all that. You won't need the money for this big surgery thing necessarily if you can prevent it. The problem is with holistic therapy, or the realm that we work in, is a lot of the time, sadly, people only come to see us when they're at a crisis, like they've reached a brick wall. And instead of seeing the other people who I love working with, which is they see it as self-maintenance, it's like a life force feeding them by doing this inner work to keep their vibration high. Whereas the others, they're just about to hit a brick wall when they decide to do this.
Yeah, and a lot of people, unfortunately, they want to avoid hurting, they want to avoid questioning, they want to avoid going against authority on every level. And so they'll keep suffering and suffering and suffering, and taking that 4x4 around the head, and making themselves acquiesce here and there, so as not to offend, the authoritative energy, whatever that might look like. And we're at that point now where we're like, excuse me, we're all siblings on this planet together. We all agree together. No one's allowing any hierarchical group anymore. It's donezo on every single level. And people are coming into that. They're coming into that loving self-awareness. And again, we mentioned those that are going to have to really let go of the mortgage, let go of the big house, the cars, the clothes, the holidays. For now, none of that's important. Your mental health, your emotional health, your loving connection to you, then to your family and friends. These are the treasures of the planet. There are ways, there's always been ways to nourish, to help, to heal. The other thing that's going to happen in this whole rebalancing is there will never, ever be another starving child in the Sudan, for example, ever again. Once the revelation and the band-aids ripped off and the screen comes down, and we the people see what the systems have done, how they have traumatized and harmed so many people on our planet, those people that hold those frequencies of authority, done, goodbye. And no, thank you.
And I think it's encouraging people to see that, you know, you are going to have to perhaps make, like Dani said, some changes temporarily, and they might be permanent, they might not be. It's like I moved to this house when I was deciding I need to be mortgage free, so I'm going to buy a smaller house. I don't want a mortgage, I don't want to be forced to have to work, because I can be in a higher level of integrity when I don't have to earn money to pay my mortgage or to pay my rent. You know, I can afford, and I knew at that point in my life I really needed to rest. I knew it's identifying a point in your life you're at and identifying what it is in that moment that you need, and to do that thing. And like the other day, I was at the beach, and there was a guy walking a load of dogs, and he said, "Oh, I'm a dog walker. I got made redundant." He said, "And now I'm a dog walker, and I'm earning more money than ever, you know, as a dog walker." And I said, "Well, how much do you earn?" And he got 6 dogs, £60 an hour. And he said, "I'm on my 3rd outing today already." And it was only like 11 o'clock. And it was his joy, you know, it was his absolute joy to be with these dogs. And you know what? I had never saw such a well-behaved group of dogs all together. They didn't jump at me because they were happy with themselves. And, you know, he was doing an amazing job helping all these dogs have fun together, you know, because they were all having so much fun. And he was being paid for doing something that was not only helping the dogs, but also helping himself and helping the owners. So it was like a win-win on every level. And I think when people see that people will always pay you for doing whatever is your spark, your initiative, your joy, you know, somebody will identify that and want to pay you for that, no matter how bizarre and odd it seems, as long as you don't limit yourself. And I think I see so many people sabotage. They're really good at something, but they sabotage the self-employment aspect of it because they try to bring in the 3D employer reality to it when they don't need to do that.
Definitely. And that dog walker, you know, he clearly was in his absolute joy and passion. And because he was so balanced and happy in his energy, because dogs are so sensitive, they're responding to that. You know, and there's always been that from a long time. Like, if we can do what we love, if we can find that passion, if we can be in that passion and not worry about, well, you know, I really love to work in a supermarket. I love the idea of scanning all the things, but I don't want my neighbors to come in and see me and think I'm a weirdo, or I'm poor, or I can't afford to X, Y, and Z. Or some people that just want to keep themselves busy doing something that others might, you know, deem menial. None of it is important. People are realizing they can share a house, they can rent a room, they can buy pool money, buy land together, build small homes, have a communal area for planting food and gardens, you know, and let's not even get into how many of the seeds have disappeared on the planet, how much GMO and pesticides, etc. That's a whole other like 2-week non-stop conversation. But yeah, it's taking back power. It's being in the passion. It's deciding, you know what, this is going to kill me, man. This stress is going to kill me. Is it worth giving my life to this stress and pressure I'm under? No, is the answer. No. Where is the self-love? Where is the self-care, right?
Talking about the supermarket, I had a client once who he was between jobs for a while, and he had, you know, quite a high power job, but he was between jobs. And because he still needed to earn a bit of money, he went to the supermarket and he was doing the packing for the home delivery for the supermarkets. And once he got a proper job, which was more in keeping with his qualifications or what he wanted to do, he said, "Oh no, I still work there on a Saturday doing that job." And I said, "Oh, why is that?" He said, "It's the most fun I have. I love it." And so he still wanted to do that job because he loved it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, and he found something that was more fun than what he actually was qualified for, but he still wanted to do something else. And I think that's the thing. You sometimes find yourself drifting. It's like how I ended up doing this. I didn't set out to do this. I kind of drifted into this experience of helping people. I didn't set my intention to do this. I just found that this was what the door opened, and I walked through it and off it went.
Yeah, it's incredible. And yeah, finding your joy, finding your passion, you know, training, doing the training, you know, you need, and making sure that if you have, like in our situations, you and I, if you have a person that you're holding in the palm of your hand while you're taking them through change, transformation, self-love, you know, I always say to people, I am love. And I always say to people, I'm the mirror, and I'm reflecting back who you are in all your beautiful ways, your valuable ways. So there's ownership, because as you and I both know as therapists, there's something called transference, where somebody will come to see you like they see their doctor, and they have that mindset. And then I've had people, they think they're in love with me. They're not in love with me. There is that same figure of authority essence that's going on. They look at you, they think you have all the answers, and they're transferring their power to you. But we're in a position now where we are, you know, owning our own power. Now, I was working with a teenage boy and his dad last week. The dad is really harsh on this boy, really harsh. And yes, I did take the dad to one side and told him in the most, you know, kind way I possibly could, you're an asshole. And you got to stop beating this kid up, because you're projecting onto him what you weren't able to do. And here's how you can do this for you. But leave this kid alone, dude. I was a lot more elegant than that, of course. But my point is this child has wanted to and shown great aptitude for guitar playing and graphic design, drawing. But his father is determined that he will go to college, he will have a degree, and he will be a lawyer. That's his father's projection. This kid is depressed, he has anxiety, he's not functioning, he just wants to be in his room on those bloody video games. And the dad is dogging, like, stop dogging your kids. Stop pushing them into corners that they don't fit in. Let them find themselves. So they're watching us, our kids are watching us, what we're doing, how we're handling this crisis that we're in globally, you know, with all these, you know, systems collapsing and people being proven to be liars and cheaters and deceivers. You know, we've got to let the younger generation come up and start helping, giving us ideas, putting forth their passions, suggesting things to us, so we can let go of, hold on, I have to be this certain symbol of authority in your life. No, maybe you don't.
And I think also, you know, as we're seeing this healthcare system collapse in the UK, definitely, I think the NHS is going away, you know, and whether it's privatized or whatever happens, I think also the problem you've got also is it's expensive to become a doctor in the UK. I think it costs £100,000 to train to be a doctor. So if your parents have invested that kind of money in you, I've seen people who are whistleblower doctors talking about this in, you know, YouTube videos and saying it's very hard when you, because you only do 5 hours even on nutrition, I think, in that course.
Yeah.
But if your family have invested all that money in you, and then it's like, my son the doctor, my daughter the doctor, you can't, as you then realize this isn't right for my soul, this isn't who I am, I want to help people, but perhaps I'm going down the wrong path, and they've spent all this money on me, it feels like a betrayal to the family dynamic. You know, you're like the golden child of the family, you know, like, oh, you know, and now you're going to fall from grace in their perception, because you're going, actually, no, I don't want to do that anymore, I'm going to be an acupuncturist instead, or, you know, or actually the truth is I want to be working in a coffee shop, it's all too stressful, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's the guilt then that you feel like, oh, my parents have spent all this money on me, I can't then back away from what my training is or what my university degree is, or all these things. So it's so much pressure put on you as a child. And I think these new kids now are not going to take that. They're like, no, I know who I am. I know what I want to do. I'm not going to be bullied or pushed by, I'm your loving parent, but I'm going to bully and push you in this direction. I think they're more liable to stand up and say, no, I'm going to do something completely different. And I think all these new, well, they're not new holistic therapies, it's just they're going to become more accessible to the masses. I think the masses are going to find themselves reaching out for help where they previously wouldn't have considered this.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. There's definitely a need to insert the frequency of love in every single human, in every single way, across the entire planet. You know, even the arse wipes at the top, you know, who've been forced and fracked and traumatized on some level themselves, you know, finding that love. And however, I mean, there are some that probably just aren't able to ever get to that level of empathy, because if you can't feel, if you can't empathize with others, then you know, what are you, a stone? You know, but yeah, for us, you know, the masses, and it is the masses, the majority, you know, raising that love vibration inside, having that self-care, that self-nurturing, realizing that people around you aren't on the planet for your gain, for your benefit. You can't live your life vicariously through them. You don't need to force them into any kind of particular thinking, because it's not fair. Each soul in each individual body has its own right to do what it wants, to do what it wants. That is a universal truth.
And I think people make bad choices as well. And it's seeing people, to get them to become visionary. It's like, I had a friend once who lived in Hawaii, and he had a great house on the best drive, you know, there. And he was a builder. And then when we went through a recession, there was no construction work in Hawaii. And when I met him, he'd lost his house, his property had been repossessed. And I said to him, why didn't you leave the house and rent it out as a vacation rental? Why did you not go and live in a studio flat for a while and get yourself some income by renting this house out? And then you would, you know, pay off your mortgage. And it's getting people to think differently. You know, there are people who get paid for being house sitters. You know, there are all kinds of things you can do, you know, to survive. You know, I see people saying, oh, I'm struggling, you know, and then I see they're driving a car that has a high intake of petrol. It guzzles petrol. Well, get rid of that car, get yourself a cheaper car that you know, it's little things that you do that can bring abundance to you. And, you know, if you're really, really struggling, there are things you can omit from your life right now and prioritize other things. Don't panic, don't go into fear, don't go into this panic, oh my god, I'm frozen in terror, what am I going to do? You know, just relax, because when you go into the fear and terror, you narrow your perception of reality down, so they become like blinkered, like a horse. They're not visionary anymore, they can't see ideas and opportunities, they're just like getting more tunnel vision, and then the more tunnel vision, they get depressed.
Absolutely. And it's such a good example, you with the guy in Hawaii, like they were going to lose the house and he could have moved out into the studio and they rented it out. And it's a lot of people that can get their head around that concept. There's an electrician I met recently, American, lovely man. And he was telling me, he's been in Costa Rica for 18 years. He was telling me that he was so well paid in America. He comes here, he's easily on a third of the money. But amazingly enough, every single month, there's more money in his bank account than he had when he was earning more in the States. Because in countries like Costa Rica, you're not paying car insurance in the way that we do there. It's like $100 a year for the year. You know, there's so much greed and grabbing in all of the systems that should be absolutely banned and stopped. Certain taxes, all of that nonsense, you know. So there's different ways we can live around the world for certain periods of time. There's something called the digital nomad now, and it's become very popular for people to go overseas, rent their homes out, or if they're in rentals, just clear out, get a unit, store your stuff, bugger off. You can still carry on working online. There are countries opening, giving visas to people that can prove they can support themselves financially, you know, while they're building up. It is so amazing. And some of the countries, you don't need the thing up the nose and the what's it doodah up your butt. And, you know, there's a lot of freedom still. And so a lot of very sensible governments and loving people on the planet. And, you know, removing the hand of fear is where we're at. And it depends to each individual. How are we going to do that? But like giving the thought, the sustaining thought, sustainability. How can I sustain my life? What's the most important thing? Your mental health. your
Yeah, and
physical health.
I think you have to, I mean, back in 2008, I always saw people in person. And then I got an opportunity, I was still living in London, I was renting, and my landlord didn't want to renew my tenancy. And I trusted my intuition and I knew to put my stuff in storage. And I went traveling and I went to Sedona. Synchronicity guided me to Sedona. I'd never heard of Sedona. I didn't know it was this spiritual center. And I was just Googling and I found this place called Dreammaker Way in Sedona, and it was called Dreammaker Cottage, and off I went there for 2 months, didn't know anybody, just thought it's the right thing to do, had an amazing experience. And then I realized that I loved seeing people in person like you do, we love seeing people in person, but I also didn't want to be fixed to the same venue. I wanted to live my joy but still be able to do my gift. And then all of a sudden, like, this voice gifted me with, well, you know, you could be anywhere. I'm like, well, how does that work? And then clients started to say, well, can't I work with you over Skype or the phone? And I was like, oh, and then it just started to happen that way, you know. And then I started singing light language as well, which helped the sessions. And that's the thing, once you identify that you're not happy with something, even though you love doing it, I didn't want to sit on a chair in the same place for 8 hours a day. It wasn't that I didn't love what I was doing. I needed to expand what I was doing in a way that meant I could be anywhere. Sometimes I'm in the car talking to people. You know, there's some of my best sessions from the car.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing. Yeah, really, really. Well, I think that we've definitely kind of gone through a lot of really beautiful options for people. I think that we hopefully have allowed more of an opening for people to go down certain avenues of how they can deal with their emotional well-being, eliminate stress and anxiety, be okay with changing, downsizing, whatever it is they need to do to feel better, feel stronger, and not be so kidnapped or held to ransom by what they've been programmed that they should do.
Yeah, you're gaining your freedom. That's, you know, and you're so, you know, I call what I do soul freedom awakening, but it's like your soul freedom is everything. You know, that's how you become a wealthy soul. You know, I once thought about writing a book called Traveling First Class in Economy, Mentally, Not Physically. And then I thought the other side was for wealthy people who are traveling in economy in first class.
Brilliant.
You know,
Brilliant.
and when you're in that economy, and I noticed that years ago, once I was paying for my own flights, and because sometimes I was having flights paid for and I'd be in business class or occasionally first class with modeling, and it was great, but I was under the restriction of other people. But once you were truly paying your own way, you know, the seat grew bigger. It was like the seat grew bigger, and I had so much freedom. I wasn't having to listen to other people's nonsense. You're truly free. You know, your freedom is worth so much. Your freedom is like making you a trillionaire. You know, you're a trillionaire freedom person is how I see it. And I think Dani's a good example too, that, you know, once you know that no matter what happens, that all the skills and gifts are inside of you, they're in you, they're going to come out of you and be shared with the world, then no matter what you face, you know that if you lost it all, you just make it all back, because you are this eternal soul, this self-generating system with ideas, inspiration, thoughts. And if you act on those, people will always, you know, recompense you for that. I mean, back in the day, I loved living in Sloane Square in London, and it was expensive. And I set up a shop in my house called the Chelsea Princess Shopping Club. And I turned my house into a shop. And, you know, it was purely because I love twinkly things and I wanted to sell those things. And I also wanted to stay in that location. And I was like, how am I going to make this rent keep flowing? And you do, once you set your intention for what is my greatest joy and excitement in that moment, and the job that you're doing. And I think the other thing is people think that they've got to stay with that job. No, you could do that job for a week and then that's it. You could go and do something else. It's like being in that flow, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I will share here is that, and I know you know this, years ago, and I'm talking 2006, 2007, my former husband and I were very wealthy, what I consider very wealthy, millions of dollars. And we made our money in buying apartment buildings and renovating them and turning them into condos. It was the thing to do at that time. We had buildings from San Diego all the way down to Texas and beyond. And then blah, 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 we lost the entire amount. Now, here's the biggest thing I learned about having millions of dollars. If I owed $150,000 a month on taxes on my buildings, which I did, it was the same stress I felt when I didn't have that wealth and I owed somebody $150. The only difference is there was way more to lose at the higher end of having wealth. And as lovely as having all those millions was, it kind of sucked as well. Because what you do is this, you start to live according to the size of your bank account. You start buying the Porsches and the Mercedes, etc. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful. Oh, the upkeep, oh, the maintenance. It is so much more, so much more, so much more. And I was so mindful of coming from both, equations, having absolutely fuck all to suddenly having like everything. And then realizing like, oh, I think I resonate better here. And I used to think, well, what am I going to do with all this money? I know I can give it to this person. And that's what I was doing. I was literally helping as many people. It felt amazing. It felt amazing. And I didn't do it with audience. Like, don't do it with audience. Unless you're in the public eye, that's a really good thing. If you are mega wealthy and you are in the public eye, I think it's really beautiful if you do show where you're putting your money to help your brothers and sisters. But I think, some people are like, look what I have done. I have made fire. I have given them life because I gave them, there's a difference in how you share what you have. But anyway, back to my point, the stress levels of 150 grand on taxes to $150 or pounds to a friend or whatever, very similar. So, and either way, it was not worth it. My lesson was, how am I going to deal with that stress? How am I going to choose to look at all these different situations, focus on my emotional, physical, and mental well-being first?
Yeah, and it's living with that stress. I've seen people where, and I feel for them. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear you're down to your last million. It just really stressful. But they are stressed. And then you see somebody else who feels super abundant. I feel super abundant. I live in my van, and they don't have any stress. They're really happy. It's a bit like, where I live, I do talk a lot to people and sort of was helping a lot of people who live on the streets in the lockdown. But in the UK, they got put in property. A lot of them got, especially if they were ex-military, they got housed really easily. But they're all back on the streets now because they're like, I hate it. I don't want to live in a property. Because of their complex post-traumatic stress, they enjoy being on the streets. They enjoy the freedom. They don't want to be accountable to anyone. So they feel more abundant, and their life skills are they can survive, So we have to be careful not to judge people, because it's, everybody's trying to find a way to live stress-free in whatever space they're in. And it's getting people over that. It's trying to get them through the anxiety to go into this place of expansion within themselves, instead of going, oh, well, I never feel anxiety, but I've made my world so small that I hardly don't do anything. And it's getting people to expand out of that. It's that comfort zone, isn't it? And really expanding themselves, which I think everything that's gone on in this last 2 years now is forcing people, like, they're coming through the birth canal, aren't they, into this new world. And it is going to be maybe difficult. It's going to be a bit of a contraction before you expand out.
Yeah, definitely. Andrea, I could talk to you for the next 2 weeks nonstop quite easily. Now, how can people get hold of you, book a session with you, and enjoy your wisdom?
Oh, well, that's very kind. I have a website, andreafoulkes.com, which I think people can see, and maybe Dani will put a link below, which is, and then I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, I've got loads of videos on YouTube, loads of free videos if people want to see me back to the beginning when I was doing This Morning and TV stuff and regressions. And then I speak light language as well, so I have lots of free light languages on my YouTube channel as well. And then I think I did do a few videos on TikTok as well. And I think that helps a different age group as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, there's so much content out there. You've been at this for over 20 years. You've been so brave and such a warrior and a leader, especially on mainstream television in the United Kingdom, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. It has been quite the journey, Andrea Foulkes, and you're still here helping everyone with your love and your great uplifting personality. And I invite everyone out there who sees this beautiful girl, my friend, to go and explore her services. So Andrea, thank you so much. Is there any final words that you have?
I think it's just to trust, really trust that, we are going through this biggest change that we've, in our lifetimes, in this incarnation, we will never go through this bigger change. It's like, this is the biggest change we will ever face. But we chose to be here in a physical body on this planet, in this time, for this experience. Nobody is by like they got lost in the universe and ended up here. Everybody is here because they wanted this experience to be here.
Good point. Very good point. All right, my love. Until next time. You're welcome. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We do hope that we've given you something to think about, that we maybe have uplifted you in some way, brought you love, brought some ideas for you to have to think about and consider. All right, I send you my love, and I see you soon.